First one, the condition of man. First, we look at the condition of man in this text, having a downcast soul. Obviously, in just reading the passage, you would acknowledge too that he was depressed. For his desperation led to agony, and his agony then led to depression. Verses 5, 6, and 11 identify his soul as cast down or downcast, depending on your translation. And in reflection of your own soul, many of you may be all too familiar with feeling like you're in a pit. That floor seems to sink deeper and deeper as the day goes on. I think there are two experiences in this text that explain why the Psalter is so downcast. The first one, there's obviously an absence of feeling God in verses 1 through 4. Here you'll notice that the psalmist is a worship leader, thirsty for God's presence, so thirsty that he likens his soul to that of a deer panting for flowing streams. Now, this shouldn't give you a mental image of a deer quietly resting by a stream. If you go home and you Google Psalm 42 and you click on images, you will find like millions of images of a pleasant-looking deer in a nice flowing stream. That is not what this psalmist is writing about. This is much like a baby who is in an open field who hasn't been fed for days, longing for his mother so that he can seek the nourishment that he used to have. This soul is longing for God, yet is not feeling the passion that he once felt. Remember that he's separated from others, and he can't do what he feels called to do, that of leading worship. I mean, imagine in your own calling in life, if you were kept from it, not that you chose a different route, but you were retained in either your home or if you were calling to be a mother, your children were all taken away from you and you couldn't talk to them or communicate to them. There would be anxiety over everything that is going on in your life. He reflects on his own past even, reminding himself of the joy that he used to have when being a worship leader in verse 4, by seeing himself in his current separation, yet having those dreams and reminders that haunt him. All of this causes us to ask, who told him that he's separate from God? Who's reminding him? Who's taunting him? Why is he allowing himself to feel, I am not around God. I don't feel happy. The joy of the Lord is not in my heart any longer, for the temple I cannot see, and the tabernacle I cannot worship in. Here the Psalter is now more aware of the absence of God than the presence of his holiness. And so we ask ourselves, in thinking about conversations in our own life, are we putting in truth, or are we seeing a false tinted view of reality? Nobody here told him that he was separate from God. He was physically separate. The second area where I think he is falling short, the second area where the psalmist is troubled within his trials, is that this psalmist is going through utter and deep, dark trials. In verse 7, he cries out, "Deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls. All your breakers and your waves have gone over me." This is not a pleasant feeling. I don't know if any of you have ever been on a lake or an ocean and a boat has gone by and all of a sudden this big current just overflows and you can't get to where you need to go. Or you've been rafting or canoeing in a river and you're fighting constantly against the current that is about you. And this is where we see deep calls to deep at the roar of your waterfalls, this overflowing force of despair that is going over this man's soul. And rather than hearing the trumpets and the percussions and the harps that he is used to hearing as a worship leader, he is now hearing waves of relentless suffering and separation, causing him to feel anxiety and despair. His soul is overwhelmed, and you can see just by his vocabulary that he feels oppressed. With waves crashing over him, it models the words in Jeremiah and Joel, where we too are all familiar with trials in our own lives, where we start using adjectives that we wouldn't normally use to describe the horrible feelings that we go through. Even now, you're probably thinking of something in your head that you're going through or have gone through, or the anxiety of something that's coming up and you don't know how you will be able to make it through that time. Many of you have parents who will soon go away to college in 5 years, and you feel like there will be an emptiness for you've spent so much time trying to raise them. And now what will you do? Where will your joy be at that point? Many of you have been retired for quite a while, and you reflect on your life and has had years and decades of working for others and providing for others. Your children now have grandchildren, and you may sit in your house and go, I don't feel like I'm a part of anything anymore. I just feel like now I'm just living, whereas I used to feel like I was thriving. And so we can reflect with our own emotions, feeling what the psalmist, feeling separated from what we see as our calling in life.